Hi there. Today's book is called Explosive, Bringing the World's Deadliest Bombers to Justice, and it was written by Cliff Todd. Mr. Todd worked for the organisation called the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, formerly known as RADI, at Fort Halstead in Kent. This is part of the Ministry of Defence, which is the national resource for explosives, technology, research, identification and forensic study. So in the event of any kind of terrorist incident, there are different layers. Obviously, you have the explosive ordnance disposal from the military. You've got the police, who sometimes have their own capability, the Met does, but then their forensic science people have an interest in it. But then the repository of all the significant information is at the fort, and they have the facilities to analyse, test, identify and so on, and it's been going for many years. It's an old Victorian era establishment. So Mr. Todd went to work there, and he wasn't directly involved in the Lockerbie investigation, but his supervisors were the guys who were running the section at the time, and he was involved in the aftermath of it, and it comprised a great deal of his training. So we all know what happened with Lockerbie. The 747 Pan Am 103 exploded over the small town of Lockerbie in Scotland. There'd been a delay in takeoff, which meant the aircraft exploded over the mainland. Had the aircraft gone on time, it would have exploded over the ocean. There would have been little chance of any forensic recovery, and it would have been a mystery. But as it was, putting the whole puzzle together, which is described in the book in fantastic detail, of small tracers and little bits of circuitry and so on, recovered from a vast area, because the aircraft broke up at cruising height, and debris was scattered over an immense field, and even the smallest bit could have been of significance. But it was eventually determined that the device was hidden in a Toshiba bomb beat, very aptly named music device, and then they were able to trace the origins of that and so on. So the book opens with one of the most significant cases there has been. He also talks from his own experience about IRA lorry bombs. They were used very extensively on the mainland. And I was intrigued to read how the terrorists boosted the charge using scaffolding poles, and it's really the science is interesting. And then another big case, which has kind of been forgotten. I remembered it at the time, mainly because it's fairly local to me. Warrington's not too far away. And the IRA attempted to blow up the gasworks at Warrington, the huge gasometers. And even though gas is highly volatile, in its stored form, it's difficult to detonate. You can ignite it, but it's very difficult to get the whole thing to detonate. And they did fail in their attempt. And in the subsequent court case, Mr. Todd was able to demonstrate against the defence that was put up that they were merely trying to set a fire, that they were trying to blow the entire site up. But in revenge for the arrests of this terrorist cell, the IRA put the bomb in Warrington Town Centre, which killed the young boys Tim Parry and Jonathan Ball. Terrible, cynical device in a crowded shopping centre on a Saturday afternoon, which shows just how bestial the IRA was and still is. Then 1994, there was a car bomb. It was an Audi car driven by a Palestinian terrorist, parked near to the Israeli embassy in Kensington Palace Gardens, and detonated. And when they recovered some of the traces of material, that at first they didn't know if it really was explosive, because even in a big explosion there can be undetonated amounts of the explosive. And when they took it back, they found this was the first use of TATP, which later became very, very significant in terrorist bombs. And the book shows really how the terrorists evolved their TTPs, constantly finding ways to defeat detection or to defeat analysis, or to make the bombs out of material that they have access to. And then in 2000 in Birmingham, Mr. Todd and a colleague Lisa are searching an address, or they're at an address which is being searched, and they find 2 Tupperware containers with an unknown substance in. And the obvious procedure would be to call in the EOD guys and have it rendered safe, but this would require it being disrupted and lose potential forensic evidence. So Mr. Todd decides on his own, sends everyone else out, and very, very carefully opens the container. It had metal clips, and some material is so sensitive that even the friction of that could detonate it. And he gets a small amount of it and does a test on it, and it's HMTD, another explosive that will have tremendous significance. So the book goes into the massive terror plots in London that we're all very, very well aware of, 7/7 and 21/7. 7/7 being 3 tube trains and the bus, and 21/7 being attempts to do the same thing, but the detonators failed to ignite the main charge. The forensic and the tactics involved and so on, very thoroughly involved in the book. And another massive one was the airlines plot. And I was always under the misconception, because when they started taking liquids off people in the airports, and the reports that it came out, and I've read a few books that have mentioned it, it said that they were using soft drink bottles or sports drink bottles. And I thought what they would done is take a well-known, I thought it was Lucozade to be honest, and then put the actual explosive material in there. It was kind of a binary thing. They had to top it up actually in flight. But no, as Mr. Todd reveals, the actual drink itself was part of the explosive chain. So it just shows you how ingenious some of these terrorists are. And even though they're very, very evil, they do have quite a few clever brains involved in their misguided work. So I found it a fascinating book, an insight into a lot of stuff that's gone on. He also was sent overseas on a lot of investigations, talks about the difficulty. Sometimes the scene hasn't been secured and material has been lost. And fascinating career, doing invaluable work, and a superb read.